Hello everybody, I'm Roxy and this is Wreck Me BS. So today I bring you some suggestions for your first nonfiction November. Why did I title the video thus? Because a lot of people are very hesitant at the time of picking up nonfiction for the first time. They associate nonfiction with school and college and just like unpleasantly chunky and tedious books, which I actually kind of like. I'm all for like the academic nonfiction sort of reads. However, I do understand the hesitance and where it comes from, and so here I have 4 categories which I think will help you explore nonfiction from a fiction reader kind of perspective, and some suggestions that I personally like, but you know that you can browse in the general category with my ideas. So let's get on. The first category is memoirs. Memoirs are basically stories, and some of them are seriously portrayed or written as stories and novels. So I think memoirs are a really good way of approaching the nonfiction subject. So my first suggestion is Angela's Ashes by Frank McCourt. This is the sequel, Tis, because I don't have the first one in my possession right now. This is a story of Frank McCourt as a child living and being very poor in Ireland, and when I say very poor, I mean it. It's a really tragic but still gripping story of his childhood until he goes to America, and this is a sequel where he's actually in America. It's quite literary, so I think you might really enjoy it. And although it's very dramatic, if you're into like historical drama and period dramas, I think you might really enjoy it. Then I want to recommend A Short Life of Trouble by Marcia Tucker. She was the founder of the New Museum of Contemporary Art in New York. She's a fascinating woman, and this book has the advantage of being quite short. It's also fascinating and funny, and she's such an admirable woman and has such a fascinating story, so how could you not want to read this? Then finally, in this category, I have Books, Baguettes, and Bedbugs by Jeremy Mercer. Jeremy Mercer was a Canadian journalist who became too involved in like Canadian mafia and stuff. Yeah, there is such a thing. And like the grim police aspect of his job, and so he had to run because he was like threatened by one of the mob guys, and so he went to Paris, and not knowing where to stay, he got to stay at Shakespeare and Company. This I chose because although the writing is not the best, and Jeremy Mercer is not necessarily the most likable guy, he does paint a really interesting picture of Shakespeare and Company and of the whole ambiance. It's very bohemian. It doesn't necessarily romanticize being like penniless and having to struggle, but it does paint it under a light that okay, you don't like it, but you still like get used to it and it becomes part of your identity, which I think is fascinating. The owner of Shakespeare and Company is also quite a character, so I think it's very digestible. So I think this might appeal again to fiction readers that are very bookish and would like to read books about books. That adds as a good bridge for my next category, which is books about books. There are so many different books about books, literary analysis presented in a very pop literature kind of way, just like lectures and essays and compilation of facts, and I just think it's a really good way of exploring nonfiction. So the first recommendation I don't have with me, I forgot to bring, I can't believe it, but you must read it. It's A Little Book of Language by David Crystal. This presents the basics of linguistics, which I count as bookish because it's language. It's very succinct, and it's very friendly to the person who has never approached linguistics or maybe has only a faint idea. And I just think it's a really good book to start on linguistics. And there is also a little book of literature in case you are interested. I haven't read that one, but if the format is similar, because they have a whole range of topics on these editions, so I think you will enjoy it either way. Again, they are presented in a way that's very digestible and that's very user-friendly and that you can just dip in and out of. Then I also have What I Talk When I Talk About Writing by Haruki Murakami. I haven't read What I Talk When I Talk About Running, although they say it's fascinating. But this one is about living his life as a writer because he has a very fascinating life. He's not an author that speaks that much about it, so it's a good opportunity to maybe get to know Murakami if you like him. But even if you don't, I mean, I hadn't read any fiction when I picked this up for the first time, and I still really enjoyed it. Why? Because he's just so engaging and he's just so honest, and he gives his opinions in a very straightforward way. He also talks about having a jazz club and struggling to keep the jazz club open, but then decided to shift and dedicate himself fully to writing. And he gives a lot of tips, so if you're into writing, that also might be good. It's just a really good both bookish book and lifestyle book, and it's really inspiring. And again, it's very easy to read and the voice is really friendly, so I think you won't have any trouble. My third recommendation is The Secret Library by Oliver Tyrrell, or Terrell. I'm sorry, Oliver. This book, apart of being gorgeous, because you have to look at this naked baby. Oh my god, yes, 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 so much yes. This says a book lover's journey through curiosities of history. So this ties in literature and history, and it's basically that. It has a bunch of like trivia information, and it has like drunk fleas and microscopes. I mean, with a name like that, how can you not want to read this? Then I have one that is a bit more of a stretch, but I still would recommend The Pleasures of Japanese Literature by Donald Keene. This was actually my favorite book of last year, and I got it from the library again, and I'm rereading it because I just love it that much. This is a collection of 5 lectures that Donald Keene gave at the New York Public Library, and although a lot of people said they weren't as incisive as they could have been because he's such an expert, that's precisely the point. This is an introduction to classic Japanese aesthetics and literature, and it is presented in a way that is so friendly to everyone, even if you haven't studied anything, because I hadn't when I started this, and then I did, and everything that was mentioned here was there. So it's a really good book to get you into Japanese aesthetic. Although it is a bit more academic than the others, I apologize for that, but please give it a chance. Category number 3 is bite-sized nonfiction. What do I mean by this? There are a lot of nonfiction books that are structured in such a way that you can really dip in and out of them. So if you're planning on reading just like one nonfiction book, you can select one and, you know, read it at night and complement that with a fiction book. And so I think that might be a really good strategy. There are a lot in this format, and I think that you will enjoy. Some of my recommendations are This Explains Everything, which is a compilation of blog entries answering the question, what is your favorite elegant and simple theory of the universe? And their responses are all over the place. There are even poems, there are actual people explaining the theory, other people just like going all over the place, and it's fascinating. It makes you think. It doesn't give you any answers to anything, which is the reason why some people dislike this book. But I think the idea behind it is genius, and it's also super easy to engage with it because you can read just like a couple of entries that tend to be like a page long, no more than that, and be done with it. And okay, that covers my nonfiction quote of the day. And so I think it's just fascinating. And again, you will learn so much. They tell you who wrote it, so you can look that person up. Then I have Gibson's Kings and Queens, Brief Lives of the Monarchs since 1066. And this is just what it says. It's a very approachable book. If you're interested in monarchy, I think this might be really interesting. But it also, even if you're not, but you want to get like your facts straight, I think it's really good. It's, again, it presents a picture of the monarch as I showed you, and the period of their reign, and just like 3 or 4 pages explaining what they did and what the political, 3 pages, the political climate was like, and then you move on. Then I have The Bottom Box by Lynn Knight, the story of women in the 20th century told through the clothes they wore. So basically this talks about feminism and the role of the woman in society, but through objects. And I think that's fascinating. Also, the chapters are quite short, as you can see. It doesn't have as many pictures, but the book itself is really short. It's tiny, just for comparison, like, look at this. It's really tiny. My last category is essays. Essays tend to have a bad rep, although they have made a comeback lately. But you tend to think of them as very academic, but you can also have very literary and free essays, and I love those. So the first suggestions is we should all be feminist, in case you haven't read it, which, I mean, probably you have, but if you haven't run, it's a really short transcript of Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie's TED Talk. And although I would say that it really comes off as being spoken, that might be a good thing if you're looking to transition. Then I have On Being Different by Merle Miller, What It Means to Be a Homosexual in the 70s. So this is a very interesting and revolutionary essay that changed so many people's lives. And it's very short. It's even shorter than this because the responses and the introduction are quite lengthy. So the essay itself, if you only want to read it, it's very short, and it's really pragmatic in the way Merle describes it, but still, like, it made me sigh, it made me ache to think we have come such a long way that we don't even really talk about homosexual community anymore. We just talk about like the queer or the LGBT plus community. That's amazing because it makes us all feel more included. So yeah, I mean, it's old school. Today wouldn't be so revolutionary, but I'm a firm believer that history is one of the most important aspects of human development, and so it's important to know our history, and so this is why I'm recommending this essay. And finally, for all you bookish people and all you book lovers, I will recommend The View from the Cheap Seats by Neil Gaiman. This is a collection of essays and speeches by him, and it's just wonderful. I haven't finished it yet because I love to just like dip in and out of it, but everything I've read, I've loved. It's just such a great compilation. Neil Gaiman is such an amazing man. Even if you maybe don't like his writing, which I do, but if you don't like his writing, but you still feel that he's an interesting person, I think you will like this. Those are my 13 suggestions. Please, if you have any suggestions, leave them down below. Of course, if this is not your first nonfiction November, and if you do like nonfiction quite a bit, you might still want to pick these up, and I hope you participate. I'm participating. I have a TBR out, so if you want to check that out, it's on the link here and down below, and I'm going to link all the books in case you want to check them out. So that's it. See you next time. But yeah, I want to sneeze. Oh my god. Allergy, guys. They are killing me. Anyway, Jeremy Mercer is a Canadian journal. Jeremy Mercer was a Canadian Category number C. Let it.